Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session. We're really excited to have you with us today. We have some great content lined up. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Amy Gates and Kinsey Dahl from Lee's Summit R7 School District. Let me make my slides here large. My name is Emily. I'm a product marketing manager here at Cisco, and here is the agenda. We're going to go through and very, very quickly introduce Meraki, cloud networking, why you might be interested in this. Then we're going to get to the meat of the presentation today, which is a case study on Lee's Summit School District. Lots of great content there, quite beefy, so I'm going to speed through the introduction, and then if we have any questions, definitely ask those in the GoToWebinar control panel Q&A box. My good friend and colleague Tanya is with me today to help answer any and all questions that you may have. And when we wrap up with that, we're going to do a live demo of Lee's Summit's Meraki network. We're really excited. They've graciously allowed us to demo that for you guys live. So again, the Q&A should be happening all throughout this session. We're actually going to be relying on all of you and your questions to help us guide the conversation today once we get to the case study. So we're very excited to have all of you with us today. Now, a little bit of house cleaning before we begin. For the qualified IT professionals on today's call, we're really excited to have you with us today. We're going to give you a free access point. It's going to be an 11N access point with a 3-year cloud management license. Totally free, yours to keep and use as you choose. So all of the wireless functionality that we demo today will be available to you. And if you have any questions about eligibility, please do check that URL at the bottom of your screen. It's meraki.cisco.com/freeap. And the only thing that we do ask is that you call us to confirm your shipping information. It is a requirement to get the access point. That way we know to ship it to the right location. To figure out who to call, please check the reminder email that should be in your inbox or perhaps your spam folder about today's session. In there should be information about your Meraki rep. If you don't see that email, just call our. So to begin, really quickly, an introduction about Cisco Meraki. Pardon me 1 second, I'm hearing that there might be some audio issues. Give me one. Okay, so we're going to try to do the best we can with the audio. We do have a lot of panelists on the line, so apologies if there's any issues. Let us know, and if for some reason we drop out or you miss a section of the audio, we are recording this session and we will be posting it online, so bear with us on that. All right, so introduction, who we are and what we do. Meraki, the company, if you weren't familiar with us, was a company founded in 2006 by a research team from MIT. Now, while at MIT, they were working on a project called the RoofNet project, and they called that because they were literally climbing on top of Cambridge apartment building rooftops, affixing wireless access points to them, and then trying to figure out how to manage those over the internet. So you can say we've been in the cloud since day one. And then the technology from that was the baseline for the technology that was used to create the product lines that you see today. So we started out making wireless access points. Then we branched out into 3 other product lines. So we make mobile device management. Hold on 1 second. We're still getting audio issues. Okay, I think what we're going to try to do is actually switch over to the telephone because we are having serious VoIP issues. I'll be right back. Okay, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. Apologies for the audio issues. We have switched over to the telephone. Not sure what's going on, although I'm going to blame Yosemite because it's been causing me more grief, possibly something with my computer. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully you can hear me now. What I want to do is actually just breeze through all of this introductory material so we can get straight away to the interesting meat of today's session, which is, of course, speaking with Dr. Amy Gates and Kinsey Dahl. So without further ado, I just want to say we do have several clients in the K-12 space. It's not an exhaustive list, but just to kind of give you some idea of who our clientele is. Small organizations, large organizations, public, private schools, and when we go through the demo today, you'll see why. There's a lot of really great features, some of which we built from the ground up to integrate into our security appliances, our access points, specifically with some of the challenges faced by schools, K-12, and universities in mind. So the way Meraki gear works is you have the equipment, whether it's an access point, a switch, a security appliance, that sits in your schools, your campus, main campus, your branch campuses, maybe even in a home if you're working in a teleworker deployment, and the equipment will initiate a secure connection back to our cloud. And by our cloud, I mean our data centers that are hosted all over the world. And what you do is you log in from any internet accessible device, anywhere in the world that you have internet, and that's how you manage your Meraki equipment. So it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. The cloud architecture is actually really beneficial in many ways. Some of them are highlighted here on this slide. I will mention the scalability aspect. If you're used to dealing with traditional architectures, you know there are some limitations that typically occur. Things like needing to buy controllers, redundant controllers, having device limits like AP limits. You don't have any of those bottlenecks when you use Meraki equipment, and that's because we pushed the management piece of your network out into this cloud, making it super scalable. It's very easy to grow and shrink with your needs. Literally for you, it's just a question of adding the devices to your locations, whether they're access points, security appliances, or switches. Another benefit of being cloud-based is this concept that we call feature velocity, the fact that we sort of future-proof your hardware investment. And what do I mean by that? Well, our paradigm is actually really awesome, and then we try to simplify it and keep everything intuitive and easy. And so the way we do that is, the way purchasing Meraki equipment works is you buy the hardware and you buy a license to operate the hardware. And the license can be for some duration, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, I think all the way through 10 years. And that license is comprehensive, all you can eat. So it includes all of your technical support. It includes access to all the cloud management features available for your device. And it includes all the feature and firmware updates that we'll push out every quarter. So it's not just bug fixes. We actually push out features, and that's what you're looking at here in this slide, some of the feature evolution, product evolution from a feature perspective across all 4 of our product lines. So you can see, you wake up one day and you might say, oh, I have wireless intrusion prevention in my access points, or, all of a sudden I have YouTube for Schools integration and Safe Search in my Meraki security appliance. You don't have to pay any extra for that. And so the hardware that you buy from us today will be less feature-rich than the hardware you own 3 years from now, because we'll have updated it, again, every quarter thereabouts. So very useful, feature velocity and future-proofing. All right, so we are now at the most important part of our webinar. I have, again, Dr. Amy Gates, who's the Executive Director of Technology, and Kinsey Dahl, who's the Coordinator of Network Services for Lee's Summit. Hi, ladies. Are you on the call?
Yeah, we're here. Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. I was wondering if you guys could just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your role at Lee's Summit and a little bit about Lee's Summit, just for the benefit of everyone on the call.
Okay. I'm Amy Gates. I'm the Executive Director of Technology for the Lee Summit School District. We are a district that is a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri. We have about 32 locations that are connected in our fiber ring. We have 17,600 students, 2,500 plus staff members. Our technology team as a whole includes all of data systems, the network. It includes instructional technology, which would be how it is used in the classroom, and it also includes the support side.
Great, great. So one of the questions that I always like to say or ask people initially is, okay, you were looking to modernize your network. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that schools are facing today and how that informed your equipment requirements?
Before we do, I'm going to let Kinsey introduce herself.
I'm Kinsey Dahl. I am the coordinator of network services. I am over the team of a total of 3 full-time people, including myself, and 1 intern who do all of the network infrastructure, as well as the servers, storage, and virtualization. So we are spread pretty thin at times. So going on to the next question, which was the modernization, as most of the districts that are on the call will know, one-to-one or increased technology is a driver for the goals right now that are pushing the technology departments. And we went into needing a product, looking for something that would give us that density model wireless and updating our network in ways that could support that level of traffic. Growing student population, you know, if we were to build another school, what would it look like if we had to add a site? And we had all of our equipment, for the most part, was in an end-of-life state. So we had an opportunity to clean slate and replace everything at once. And that's what drew us to Meraki.
Great. Thank you. When you were looking at our gear, I'm assuming you might have been evaluating other vendors as well. Was there anything initially that you were concerned about or skeptical about as far as our solution that once you got your hands on the equipment was resolved?
I'll speak to that and then let Kinsey take off because at that time, Kinsey wasn't part of our district team. When we began to look at a solution that would take us into the future, it had to be something that we could manage and sustain financially, meaning that we had equipment, quite a bit of technology equipment that had reached into life simply because of budget dollars. So as we began to look forward, we needed that ability to, as Kinsey said, let it grow with us, but also on the support side. Yes, was there a lot of, from our own technology team, a lot of questions about what does this cloud-based management look like? Because we did have a system in place that was controller-based. So there was a lot of nervousness, I guess, so to speak. So when we stood up, what we did was go convert one entire school into a pilot-type test environment as that environment to prove it on.
Okay. Great. So one of the things that I'll just highlight too for the benefit of folks on the line, just in terms of the cloud architecture, I know it can make some folks nervous, but things to note about it, it is, like I said before, there's a lot of scalability benefits. There's also a lot of security benefits. So our data centers are SSAE 16 certified. I think it's formerly SAS 70 certified. They undergo daily penetration testing by McAfee. We have high availability built into them, high uptime agreements, so 99.99% service level agreements. And we ourselves are PCI Level 1 compliant, which is the highest level of PCI compliance, and have customers who built HIPAA and PCI compliant networks using our gear. I know that's more for a retail space, but just to sort of illustrate that we are very focused on security. And one thing also to note is that
the Meraki equipment, when it initiates those connections back to our cloud, those connections are pretty small. They average about 1 kilobit per second per device, and that's because we use an out-of-band control plane. So we don't ever see or store end-user data. That goes wherever it was intended to go. We just keep the management and monitoring statistics we need to present the information that you'll see in the demo. So thank you guys for that. So I love this slide. This is great. These are actual live action shots of your access points and your gear. Can you tell us a little bit about once you were ready to commit to Meraki and you started deploying our gear, what that was like? Was it hard? How long did it take you to get set up?
Well, we did the entire deployment in the summer. I actually came on midstream of that. So they began in May and had started footwork prior to looking at, as you can see, we had to get creative with some of our rack mounting because the switches were deeper than what we had had before. We looked at power constraints as far as putting in new UPSs because we wanted to protect that investment. We also did a lot of site survey work as far as the access points going towards that density model. Some of our buildings are older than others. They were built during different phases of concept for building design. So some are a more open concept with sliding walls and those types of things that we had to factor into the channelization and some of the frequency stuff that we did on the wireless side.
Great, great. So we're getting some great questions in from the audience, in fact, so I'll pose one to you ladies. It seems like a couple people asked that if you weren't forced to make an upgrade because of the sort of end-of-life issue, would that have influenced your decision at all? I mean, were you looking at upgrading just based on the fact that you had a growing student population, or that you were going to be looking at perhaps upgrading wireless infrastructure just to provide guest access or things like that?
Absolutely. We had a board that our strategic plan is moving us toward a one-to-one, and we were going to have to upgrade no matter what. Actually, when we went into this, the wireless part of our network was only 4 years old at that time. And due to us wanting that single pane of glass, we went ahead and chose to upgrade all of that. We were going to have to put more access points in no matter what, because we were just in that coverage model. And to get ready by that first fall to have classroom sets of devices everywhere, we were going to have to add. We just chose to make everything with the Meraki system.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to just highlight this. I think this is a great example of some additional benefits of the cloud dashboard. Of course, we've got a lot of functionality that you might find in other solutions as well. I know there's a lot of things like email alerts or role-based administration, but there's some slick little features like the integrated floor plan view, which we'll definitely demo when we get to that part of the session, and things like automatic firmware updates. I don't know if you ladies have anything to add on this. I'm going to take a note here to show these things in the demo.
Yeah, we're leveraging all of them, and they've all definitely helped bridge that span of the additional devices, the additional use, and the staffing. So that has been critical, particularly the email alerts. I mean, everything on your list really has been critical to making this work with the staffing that we have.
Okay, great, thank you. So here I think we can start diving in to the meat of the issue. So there were some questions that were popping up. People want to know what model access points are you using, and this answers one question that came up, which was, are you using, one AP in a classroom? And then there was another question that said, if so, how many kids do you typically have in a classroom?
Yes, we're using one AP per learning area, so for the most part that's a classroom, but some of those may be a theater area. We also put the access points in the office area to account for that coverage. Some of those higher capacity areas like the auditoriums, we put in multiple access points, and we're actually looking at the demand is getting such where they're wanting even more users in there at a time. So we're looking at those potentials as well. As far as model of access points, we are using the MR, I believe it's the 24, and we use that in almost every area. Our class sizes are no more than 30, 32. So that is sufficient and meets those requirements, and we have seen success in those areas. And what was the other part of the question, or did I cover it all?
I think you covered it all. We did see some people asking, let's see, how many SSIDs? It looks like you have more than one SSID, I'm thinking.
Yeah, we run several SSIDs for different reasons. One of them is for district-owned Active Directory authenticating devices. So that would be our laptops, our Macs, and so that's using your Windows credentials to confirm that you have access to the wireless. The second one is for our Chromebooks. We're Google Apps in Education, and so we have a lot of Chromebooks and some other devices like the iPads, iPods, Kindles, Nooks, you name it. So that is using the MAC address with Radius to capture those and confirm that they can be on the network. The next one we have is called After Hours. That's where we kind of open up the BYOD spectrum for students. So if they are there for a club meeting, a sport event, staying late to work on a project, that comes open and they can use their Active Directory credentials to authenticate. And then during the school day, that is not available and it disconnects them. Then we also have just a guest network, and that network authenticates against Meraki's authentication. So users can request an account, put in their password they would like and their username, and then they can visit one of the guest ambassadors at the buildings who can approve their access for whatever time frame is appropriate.
That's awesome. I do have one question for you. Are all of these SSIDs broadcasting on all of your APs, or have you restricted them to various parts of the campus?
The first three are broadcast throughout the campuses, and we do have some areas where broadcast of the guests is not on, but for the most part, those are very few and far between. We focused on making sure it was available in those public use or presentation areas.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So you also are using the MX security appliances. So for the benefit of folks on the line, these are unified threat management boxes. They are basically capable of doing, your typical firewalling, but also traffic shaping policies, intrusion prevention, content filtering, malware, anti-phishing, client and site-to-site VPN, WAN optimization, those sorts of things. And I was wondering if you guys could let us know what you're using your MXs for, and if there's any features in particular that you want to highlight.
Yeah. The MXs we use for all of our traffic for the internet. So we're using the content filtering feature as well as the firewall feature. We have our data center behind one of these as well. We have a unique use case. We have a site that is not connected on our fiber optic. So we're using an MX out there to leverage the cell card functionality. And rather than using the cell card as failover, we're actually using it as the primary method of connection. And they VPN directly back to the other set of MXs that we have that have a primary function of VPN. So we have about 11 of those, I believe is the number we had on the last slide. And they're in those various roles of VPN, remote tunneling of VPN back, as well as content filter and firewall for our network traffic.
Fantastic. So just to kind of add on to what you were saying before for folks online, all of our security appliances support dual WAN uplinks, and then also there is a cellular uplink that you can use for 3G, 4G wireless. Many people choose to use that as a failover, but like Amy was saying, you could also use that as your primary uplink as well if you wanted to. So that's actually really cool. And then there is a feature which will demo sort of the ease with which you can set up site-to-site VPN.
Yep. We also use the group policies feature, which I see you have highlighted on the slide there. Mm-hmm. We don't open up. We're fairly open as far as content filtering. One thing we have kind of kept the reins on is the streaming media. And so we use the Active Directory groups to identify instructional staff opposed to students and other staff, and allow streaming media categories aside from YouTube, which is open across the board for the most part, to open up the streaming media of Netflix, Vimeo, and all of those that teachers have leveraged for instructional purpose.
Okay, great. Fantastic. And so I think the last thing as far as the physical stack are the switches. So for folks online, Meraki has both access and aggregation switches available, layer 2 and layer 3 families. So they're very easy and to configure and use out of the box, and there's some great features. We'll highlight the virtual stacking, I think, in the demo, but I'm totally blown away by this 170 plus terabytes of data that gets transferred each week through your network. That's incredible. Do you want to talk a little bit about the switches and what you found useful there?
Yeah. The switching, is pretty straightforward. It's very plug and play. It's nice to not have to dive into command line on these. So it's all through that GUI interface, which makes it very visible. We've been able to troubleshoot issues with devices, with different features, find rogue DHCP servers that were causing network issues, use the fiber. We have 10 gig fiber between our sites, so all but 2 sites were within distance of being able to use the Meraki, so we don't have anything but Meraki in those buildings. The others, we did have to go to the Cisco product line to get the distance, but those were some pretty far-stretched sites distance-wise. PoE, we're looking at, we've got several buildings using VoIP. We have the access points, obviously, using the PoE, and we're looking at deploying more VoIP phones at the remaining sites this coming summer.
Great. So you have a question. Do you mind telling us the model of your VoIP phones, if you know?
We are on a Mitel system. Okay. And the models vary.
Great. And so for those who, because we always get this question too, do we support CDP for VoIP? The answer is yes. We do support CDP version 2 for voice VLAN. So if you have any Cisco VoIP phones that require that protocol, we support that. And then also LLDP. Fantastic. So I also really like this slide because I heard you guys have some great troubleshooting stories vis-a-vis all of these pieces of equipment. Do you want to maybe share a couple with us? If you can prompt if you need help.
Yeah. Okay. So the first, I'll just kind of run through some generic stories which brought us to these bullet points. We have, our model is we have people for the most part in every building at a tech level, so they're normally helping the end users more directly, and we've really used the feature of the blinking and being able to power cycle APs remotely. That keeps us from having to drive out to the site, to get a ladder out, or find the switch port it's on, all that stuff. We're able to, from our desks here centrally, confirm what AP we're looking at just to make sure that everything was put in the system correctly and we're talking about the same place with the blink feature, so I can have a tech stand under it and confirm that the lights start strobing on it. And once we do that, we're able to remotely send the reboot command to it, and some that have been up longer than others sometimes have a little bit of trouble, but that usually resolves the issue and we move on. So that has been great. We've been able to cycle switch ports. So if we're seeing, an AP isn't responding to that reboot command, then we can kill the port and bring it back up, all from a central location without having to heavily engage the tech into tracing wires or anything like that. Security appliance, we started out last school year without having centralized Windows updates. So all of our computers were going out to Windows update servers directly at Microsoft. They also had a product called Deep Freeze on them, which was restoring them back to their original state, which is great in a lot of ways. But when updates were constantly trying to apply, they would apply, reboot, and then they would try to apply again. So we were able to quickly identify that 30% of our network traffic was getting consumed by these Windows updates that were constantly re-downloading because of the products we were using to help maintain our network and PC security. So last year, we then used the MX to block these updates, except for the Active Directory categories of technology staff so that they could still update machines. And then after we remedied our situation with needing an internal update server as well as moving away from the product that was a solid PC state, we were able to open that back up, keep a close eye on it, and confirm that we got that traffic stopped.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. That's 30% of your bandwidth. That is crazy. I just want to do a little shout out here too, and it looks like you guys have been using this, but we do, if you aren't familiar, we do have a mobile app for iOS and Android where you can go and download to your mobile device, and it provides a much more mobile-friendly way to monitor your Meraki networks. I don't know if there's anything you want to add here at all.
I don't think so.
Okay, great. And we will go through. Could you maybe just speak about overall your level of satisfaction and any future plans that you have about expanding your network using Meraki here?
I would, have everyone kind of look at that quote there. We have moved in the last 2.5 years to 7,000 Chromebooks on our network. Our Chromebook total, we've got about 14,000 devices on the network. Our Chromebook total, which is total web-based device, as you know, it now is more than our PC total in the district. So without this, it would not have been possible to grow that fast, and it needs to be seamless in the classroom. And that, I would say that's what Meraki has allowed us to do. Our end users are very demanding, as most are, but in the classroom, when you've got 30 students staring at you, the technology just needs to work, and that is what happens in our current environment. It was pretty seamless. There were a few hurdles along the way. When I've often said it's only in education where all of your groups come back on one day. So, for example, that August, we began in May, and we couldn't start in May until after school was out. But yet we had summer school going and all the rest of the regular year-round work in the district. So we had to work around that, and we recabled every classroom, pulled out all of the switches, all of the access points, put those back up. And what's not mentioned here, we also did a full data center upgrade that same exact summer and redid our Active Directory. So there was a lot going on. Mm-hmm. So all of that then come August, that second week in August, on a Wednesday, we had over 1,200 staff members come back to work and expect that when they turn their computers on, it worked just like it did 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. And a week later, 5 working days later, then 17,500 students came back on that one same day. So, when your network comes up that quickly, there are a few hurdles, but for the most part, we were able to move right on and very seamless. And not only just then, but it's allowing us to continue to have the ongoing conversations for the future growth working towards a one-to-one.
And I think one of the biggest things that shows our success with this was in the 2012-2013 school year, if you look at our network use statistics through our internet service provider, we, at the max, pulled about 10 terabytes total data, inbound, outbound. Mm-hmm. And when you look at what it was last month, the end of last school year, we were at 20 terabytes, so solidly doubled. And I pulled statistics from last month, and we were at 25 terabytes. So when the question is posed to us of was it successful, we think the numbers speak volumes. We know that there's always the question of how they're using the technology, especially with some of the students and all of the fun stuff they find online. But we know that our network prior to this upgrade would not have been able to handle that volume of traffic.
Thank you, ladies. That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. And I'm really glad that it's working out for you as well as it has. I think that is it for the actual slide portion. So what I'd like to do is switch over to the demo. I know if there's anything at any point on the network that you want to highlight or want to sort of talk about, please chime in. Let me just resume my session here. Pardon me, I have a long password. All right. So, and while I'm logging in, I'm just going to field one more question that I see has been written up on the board. Does Meraki offer a solution for BYOD? The answer is yes. That would be our systems manager, mobile device management for iOS, Androids, Macs, PCs. If you are going to be able to do something like restrict those devices from joining your network, if you want to sort of like force people into a management mode, there are different ways with our wireless technology where you can prevent BYOD devices from joining a wireless network, for example, until they have enrolled in mobile device management. Otherwise, if you don't want to actually actively manage devices that students bring on campus themselves, we do have some features that are built into networks, like the ability on wireless to apply group policies automatically by device type, and a lot of visibility actually that I can show you right now. So actually let's dive in, and hopefully that will help answer some of the questions. Let's make this large. Okay, so ladies, just to confirm, this is your network, I'm hoping.
Yep.
All right, so what I did was what any of you would do if you had Meraki equipment. I basically, from my browser, an internet accessible device, logged into dashboard.meraki.com. I selected the network that I wanted, and immediately I'm popped into this overview page where I'm getting statistics about all of the places Meraki equipment is deployed. And because everything's green, everything looks healthy and wonderful. Of course, there'd be some red, or you could expand this out here and look at all the different networks that you have and see over the past week if there's been any downtime or any kind of sort of sporadic connectivity issues or perhaps a reboot here and there. And the beauty of this page is that right away, aside from getting sort of management data, or I should say health and status and connectivity data for your networks, if you have many networks that you're monitoring, you can very quickly sort by usage or clients. If you've tagged your networks in any way, you could search for them there, or search by name. So I could just type in something here and see whether or not we had a network that had this name, and I could dive in immediately into that network. And this page here is where you come to see all of the visibility into client devices and applications, and sort of the bandwidth being consumed on whatever network you've chosen for a given time frame. So if we say, for example, look at the last week, we get a good sense of how busy this network is, maybe some sort of day-night patterns. And you can see right away we've had 377 unique client devices connect to this CCE network. It looks like it's got wireless and switching in it. And what I could do is literally look down here and say, okay, well, some of these devices are presently online, wired devices and wireless. Some were online recently but are no longer online. but they were there in the past week at some point. And there's a bunch of other information that you could actually select to see. And so from a BYOD perspective, where this gets fun is we have this sort of integrated Google-like contextual search. So you can literally come in and do things like say, okay, well, how many of the devices that connected in the last week are iPads? Well, we had 14 different iPads. Here they are. Here's the ones that are online currently. Or maybe I'm looking for Windows devices. Maybe I want to see if there's any legacy Windows devices. Or perhaps I'm looking for, Chrome OS books, and I just want to see how many of those devices are connecting. So you can see all of these devices, and if you're running either the MX security appliance or our wireless access points, it's very easy to select these devices and immediately apply policies to them. So you could do that if you had any policies defined here, or even apply policies if you're running wireless based on the SSID. So maybe you want to block people from your guest network, but allow people onto your main school network. So very, very easy to do directly from this page. So that's client device fingerprinting. We also do application fingerprinting, so you can see right away where bandwidth is going, and you could actually expand on this, sort by usage, and see right away the top consumers of bandwidth on your network. And if you wanted to click into any one of these applications, you could see which devices are contributing most to that application consumption. And even if you have this enabled, this ability to see the specific destinations and websites, you'd actually see where they're going. So what is miscellaneous web? Well, it's TCP over port 80, but here are the specific destinations that are being accessed and the average time spent per client there. So if this were problematic or concerning, you could, of course, then have the information you need to make policy decisions. Now what's great is either from this page or from the previous page, you can also dive into any particular client and go in and see the client view. So any client passing traffic through Meraki equipment will have a view similar to this. You can basically come in and see, somewhere we're out in the middle of the ocean somewhere here, sorry about that. You can see that this is a wireless client and it is connected right now in real time. Here's its signal strength. You get some information about it, so we can see a username, we can see it's a Windows 7 device, the capabilities on wireless for it, and you get to see, again, for a particular client, statistics on bandwidth, statistics on application, and if I expanded this out, you would have the same kind of visibility into specific destinations and time spent there for this particular client. And perhaps that would precipitate a policy decision. Maybe you'd go in again and block this client, whitelist them, or apply some kind of group policy to them. So what I want to do is actually show you how you would do that, just how you would go in and create a group policy, just to show you how easy it is. And I'm going to pretend like I'm creating one right now. Literally, you come in, you're going to name your policy something. You can decide when you want this policy to be in play. So maybe I only care about 8 to 5 on weekdays when people are in school. And then where it gets fun is you can come down here and say, okay, I could apply my typical layer 3 firewall policies, allow or deny things based on protocol or destination, IP and port numbers, or because I have this visibility into applications, I can go and say, you know what, I'm just going to block a particular application category, or maybe it's just one application that's causing me grief. Or maybe I don't want to block an application outright, but what I want to do is throttle it or prioritize it in some way. So, you know, maybe Netflix or Hulu and maybe Google Video are causing us some grief. All we'd have to do is choose a limit and tamp this down. And what it means is that anyone who got this policy, any user, groups of users, device, or groups of devices that get this policy, it would apply only on the weekdays during school hours, and it would block the user or the device from accessing BitTorrent, and their Netflix, Hulu, and Google Video would be immediately throttled to 250 kilobits per second. And you could actually prioritize these if you prefer, if that's what you're trying to do. You just hit ignore limits and bump that up to unlimited. And then you go out and you apply your policies either individually, like I was showing you before, or you can integrate with an authentication service and do it that way. So very, very easy to get that up and running. And I think what I'm going to do very quickly is just highlight the killer feature maybe from each product line, and then we'll try to answer some questions. Oh, and I do have a question, which is, can I show the blink feature for the AP? So yes, we can. Let's actually talk about wireless first. So if I go in and I look at my wireless page here, I can go and see all of the access points, again, for this one particular network for last week, the usage and connectivity statistics, and here's all my access points. Again, there's tons of information that you're not seeing here, but you could actually select if you wanted to see it. And you can dive into any one of these access points and come to what we call sort of its configuration or local health and status page for this device. So we're looking into the Meraki access point here. It's an MR24. We're getting information about it. We can even see, for example, which wireless SSIDs are being broadcast right now, and information about its IP addresses, which ports on which switch it's connected to. And so again, because Amy and Kinsey are running a full stack here of Meraki equipment, you could actually dive into this port or dive into this switch if I wanted to, for example, and come to the switches status page and configuration and go look at that. So very easy to hop, skip, and jump around from network to network or device to device, or even look at various clients just by doing a dynamic search there. So what I want to show you, though, what's really interesting is that for all of our equipment, whether it's an access point, a switch, or a security appliance, when you go to one of these local configuration pages, there's always a section down at the bottom called Live Tools, and this is where you can actually go in and remotely troubleshoot your device. So the blink LED feature is right here. You would click this here, and then wherever in the world that AP happens to be, its front panel lights would start blinking. All of our switches have this too. It's very useful if you're in a stack of switches and you're trying to find the one switch you need to go in and like check the cabling on, for example. And the MX supports this as well. So you have the ability to go in and just remotely blink the lights to direct somebody to that device. And then here too, you can see our floor plan view. So this was something that was on one of the earlier slides. Basically, if you have floor plans, you can upload your floor plan view into dashboard and then place your APs there. So it's just a nice way of knowing if you're getting a call about a particular part of a building, you can very quickly go into the access points there, and these will turn red or yellow if there's any kind of problem or issue in cloud connectivity or getting out to the internet, or if there's some sort of internal problem detected by the access point. So if you had connectivity issues in this area and you saw one of the access points was yellow or red, that might be a red flag that you could go check out. So on the wireless side, I think what I'm going to just show you guys very quickly is how you would get your SSIDs up and running. So all of our access points support up to 15 unique SSIDs, and you just go in and you define them in this pane, and then once you've defined them, you switch over to your access control view and you select whichever SSID you've just enabled. For example, we could have a guest SSID, and you decide your association and authentication requirements here. And this is where you're actually configuring your wireless network for the type of people and devices you want connecting and sort of how it's going to be controlled. So you can see here, this is a guest network, so it's open, anyone can associate, but you could have a pre-shared key. You could use other authentication mechanisms. For example, if you wanted to authenticate with a Radius server, you could do that. This is a guest network though, so I'll leave it as open. The other thing to note is that we have the ability to provide splash pages through the dashboard, sort of integrated, built right in. There's no additional fee or service for this, and you could actually say, well, I don't need a splash page. Maybe I want a click-through splash page. There might be some terms and conditions. Or I could use a splash page for other types of authentication if I wanted to. So I could have a splash page pop up and have folks authenticate using Active Directory wirelessly. Or you can do other sorts of things too. This is the feature I was talking about where if you want to prevent devices from being able to join a wireless network until they've enrolled in your systems manager mobile device management, You can do that here as well for additional control. Now there's other various options here from a BYOD perspective. This is what I was talking about earlier. You could actually say, well, you can join this SSID. It's going to be a guest SSID. We're going to have a very basic click-through splash page. But, you know, if you are a, you know, we're not expecting any BlackBerry, so we're going to block BlackBerries from joining. And maybe if you are a Chrome OS, you're going to get one type of policy. We've just got whitelist and blocks defined here, but for this particular network. But if you had listed out your group policies, you could select different policies for different types of devices. And so you don't need to necessarily know who's bringing what onto your network to know that if it's an iPad, it's going to get one policy. If it's a Windows device, it's going to get another policy. Now for guest networks, the only other thing that you would need to do is just put your network into NAT mode if you wanted to create secure, isolated guest Wi-Fi. This literally prevents users of this SSID from communicating with each other and from communicating to your school resources on your local area network, but it will allow them to get out into the internet. So very easy way to very quickly lock down and provide wireless guests. But of course you can do bridge mode if you want to actually perhaps segment traffic by VLANs using upstream DHCP servers and whatnot. So just some of the ease and useful features that are available to you when you are configuring wireless. I want to just touch very quickly on maybe the killer feature for the switch, which would be the virtual stacking that Amy and Kinsey talked about. So what they meant was, because we are managing our switches from the cloud, you can actually see all of your switch ports in your network anywhere in the world they happen to be deployed, regardless of make or model. And you can actually go do things like say, well, I only want to look at ports 1 through 15. I want to find if there's any trunk ports maybe. Let's see if you have any like that. Maybe, oh, I'm going to make a guess here and see, you know, something connected, if there's anything connected to an MR access point. So it looks like there are 30 switch ports that might actually have met all of these criteria, and there's a bunch of different things you could actually search by here. And all you would do is say, okay, well, I want to actually edit all of these ports en masse. I want to enable or disable spanning tree or PoE, assign a port schedule so the ports are on and available only at certain times of day on certain days. Maybe I have an access policy so I can restrict use of these ports until there's been some sort of authentication mechanism, assign VLANs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's virtual stacking, very useful feature, and again, it's just built right into the dashboard. So I think the other thing I'm going to do is maybe go find an MX security appliance. Let's see if you have, so maybe I'll just dive into this guy. So the MX, again, if you want to see its local status page, looks like this. Again, you're getting a port panel view, getting some information about uptime on the device. You can see the live tools are a little bit different here than what we saw for the access point. And the key or killer feature of the MX, I would have to say, is the site-to-site VPN. So I will show you that very quickly, and then I just want to show you the content filtering, because I know that's something that schools also care about very deeply. So our site-to-site VPN, if you've ever tried to set up IPsec site-to-site VPN between locations, it can be very manual. So, you know, one of the things that you can do here is say, all right, I have MXs, I'd like to connect them. You just choose what kind of tunnel you'd like, split or full. Decide if you'd like a mesh VPN where everyone talks to everyone else, or a hub and spoke mode. And we typically, at least in Meraki, our office here, we use mesh, so I can just select this. And then the cloud and the MX work together behind the scenes to set up phase 1, phase 2, the authentication and encryption. The cloud already knows what subnets you've defined. So all you have to say is, well, do I want to export this over VPN or not? And you say yes or you say no. And if you say yes, great, it gets exported. You go to the next MX that you'd like to configure, do the same 3 clicks, and you'll start to see your VPN participants pop up here, and you'll be able to go monitor them in a monitor VPN page if we had actually enabled VPN. So the last thing that I'm going to show you very quickly, and then I'm afraid we're going to have to go because there is another webinar scheduled, is content filtering. So just to say, it's very easy to set site-wide content filtering on your networks. You just go into the content filtering section, select your categories. We have about 70, 75 different categories here. And this is where you would also enable things like YouTube for School integration, typing in your YouTube for School ID. You could enable safe search and block encrypted search too if you'd like. So in a nutshell, that is the wireless, the switching, and sort of the MX key features. Really, really appreciate your time and attention. Again, I apologize for the audio shenanigans at the beginning of the webinar, but have no fear, we've recorded this and recorded your questions, so reach out to us, get your free access point, and check our website shortly because we will be posting this online. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kinsey and Dr. Gates. Really appreciate it and appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day and hope to see you again at a future session.